stand by, everybody. The chair will open the meeting in a few seconds.
Everyone, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 112.
Welcome to meeting number 112 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics.
Order 81-4. The committee is commencing consideration of the main estimates 2024-25. Vote 1 under Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying. Vote 1 under the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. Vote 1 under the Office of the Senate Ethics Officer. Votes 1 and 5 under Offices of the Information and Privacy Commissioners of Canada, referred to the committee on Thursday, February 29th, 2024. La réunion aujourd'hui se déroule sur le...
Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members can attend in the room, in person, or on Zoom remotely using the Zoom application. I would like to remind all members not to put earpieces near the microphones because this can cause feedback and potential injuries.
I'd like to welcome our witnesses for the first hour today from the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. Once again, Mr. Conrad von Fickenstein, who is the Commissioner. Sir, good to see you again. I think I spend more time with you than my wife lately. Melanie Rushworth, who is the Director of Communications, Outreach and Planning, and Sandy Tremblay, who is the Director of Corporate Management. Mr. Commissioner, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Please proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to speak with you about the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner's budgetary submission for 2024-2025. As you know, I have with me Sandy Tremblay, Director of Corporate Management, and Melanie Rushworth, Director of Communications, Outreach and Planning.
I'd like to thank you all and your fellow members for having voted in favor of my permanent appointment. I very much appreciate that vote of confidence. The Commissioner's Office consists of around 50 professionals who are doing everything possible to ensure that 3,200 people subject to the Conflict of Interest Act or the Conflict of Interest Code for members of the House of Commons avoid conflicts of interest. I see the office as having a twofold purpose. One, to help public officials avoid and manage their conflicts of interest. And two, to facilitate the movement of qualified people in and out of the public service. These principles reflect my approach to the role of Commissioner. Ultimately, the goal is to safeguard public confidence and the integrity of elected and appointed officials. Toute personne expérimentée et compétente finit.
All experienced and competent people will, over time, be exposed to potential conflicts of interest. To me, this means the credibility of the advice and guidance provided needs to be both helpful, innovative, and timely. That is why you will see a change to our educational offerings throughout the year.
Its request is an alignment of funding to ensure that the continued growth of the educational and outreach functions of the office. This will allow us to develop a more tailored and subject-specific opportunities to meet the needs of those subject to either regime. These approaches will be online, in person, and on demand. In the near future, an online course specifically tailored to meet the needs of elected members under the code will be launched. Reflecting our efficient code, the budget for this year reflects an increase of just under 3%, which will be mainly used to offset some cost increases. Melanie, Sandy, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have about our office, our finances, or operations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of notes before we do have a little bit of committee business that we need to discuss at the end. First will be the budget for this particular study. We're going to need approval of that at the end. And secondly, just some of the recommendations on the tool extraction data report that's coming up. So I'll discuss, I'll keep a little bit of time at the end for that. So we're going to start with our first 6-minute rounds. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Commissioner, how many investigations do you have ongoing today?
2.
How many investigations are ongoing with respect to Sustainable Development Technologies Canada?
The proposal of those are with regard to the sustainable development.
Are you able to undertake preliminary investigations into other board members at SDTC?
As you know, we basically act on requests from the public of members. I have the authority to start investigations of my own, but again, all of this has to be done on the basis of credible evidence or suspicion, etc. And I have seen no reason so far to start anything other than the 2 which we have ongoing.
And with respect to the other members of the board and matters of public record and including committee transcript, you're confident that there's been no reasonable suspicion has been raised that voting members were doing so to materially benefit themselves?
Correct. There's been no evidence of any kind. Suspicions or allegations have been raised with regard to the other members.
And of course, if you were presented with new evidence by a member of the Parliament, member of the public, through open source information like media or committee testimony, would you investigate other board members?
Well, it depends on what the information is, how credible it is, how substantive, etc. But if indeed they meet the threshold of that there is something that needs to be investigated, there's sufficient evidence to indicate something contrary to the rules we will present, then we would do it.
Now, in your review or briefs on past files, past investigations, has it been the case that investigations, in this case we're talking about the Board of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, where you're investigating 2 individuals who served on the board, that in similar past circumstances that those investigations could give rise to further investigations of other members of the board based on your past experience?
Well, my past experience is very short, as you know. I don't know whether my
Experience of
predecessors
the
had
office.
I can just answer basically hypothetically. Yes, it is possible. I don't know what has happened. Melanie, do you know of any past investigations that have spawned subsequent investigations?
None that are coming to mind.
Have you been able to obtain all of the information that you've requested, documents, evidence from the Sustainable Development Technologies Canada organization?
Yes.
So they've been forthcoming. Are you able to share with us who your point of contact is with SDTC? There's been a number of changes with that organization since your investigation commenced.
You're asking me for some detail that actually my investigators, so all I know is that we've asked for information, we got all the information, we asked the witnesses to come forward, they came forward, they were put under oath, and they have testified.
So
if you want to know who actually does it here, who actually we contacted on the organization who's been responding to us, I can get you the name, I don't have it here.
I appreciate that, sir. So am I correct in inferring from your response that you've interviewed both of the subjects of the 2 complaints that you've received from SDTC and that they swore an oath and provided testimony to you?
That's correct.
Could you take us through the investigative process so far for the SDTC file? I appreciate there's information that you're not able to get into until you've presented your report. But I imagine there's a process that you'd follow. Are you able to take us through that and forecast when you would expect the resolution? I know informally, I believe I asked you before, and you said as soon as possible, which I appreciate. But what has the process looked like?
Well, the process, as you appreciate, first of all, the complaint is made. We look at it. We see that there is enough substance to warrant an investigation. Then we do an investigation. We notify the people. We ask them to send us all relevant documents. They send them to us. We examine the documents. On the basis of that, we then structure the questioning. We ask them to come. They put them on their oath. They answer the question. If we need some other people as a result of those questions whose testimony will be relevant, we'll summon them. Same process again. Then once everything is done, we come to a conclusion, write a report. The factual part of the report we send to them saying, hey, these are the facts that we found. Have we anything incorrect or do you want to help us? We certainly don't want to misstate the factual situation. They give us a response. And then once we have that, then the whole thing is translated into both languages, and then we publish it. And on the same day, we notify the person who's here. I can tell you now that certainly before the 1st of August, you'll see the report.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Commissioner, I'm just going to ask if you could just speak up just a little bit, if you don't mind. We don't have the ability to put those longer mics on as we have in the past, so if you can just speak up a little bit, that would be terrific, or maybe a little bit closer to the microphone. Mr. Baines, you have 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for joining us and with your team again today. When you were last at this committee, you were asked about sponsored travel by a number of MPs. Do the problems associated with sponsored travel, like the apparent limitless value of gifts receivable during a travel, is that a problem for you? Have you given any thought to this since the last time you visited?
You know what the rules are, these are the rules that you yourself passed. It's the codes that the House passed for members of the House. So I administer them, I live with them. Could they be improved? That's up to you to decide, and the general public. You know, my job in this case is not to suggest that you change your code, but you decide the code you want to live by, and I apply it.
Thank you for that. When a member believes an investigation is warranted by your office, do you think it's responsible of the member to predetermine the outcome of the investigation and publicly share this view?
Well, I don't think that's the proper behavior, but on the other hand, we live in a country of freedom of speech. They can, of course, say what they want. It's their opinion. That doesn't mean that will be the outcome of the investigation.
Section 13 of the code states, a member shall not participate in debate on or vote on a question in which he or she has a private interest. Does this mean that someone who is advocating for a sector in which they have financial interest during a debate in the House or a committee is violating this part of the code?
Well, it depends again how you define sector, you know, and how large of it. If you're talking about, let's say, farming, you know, and you're a farmer, obviously you can speak on it. If, however, you're a milk farmer, and this is something specifically on milk farming, etc., you know, you probably should not, because that clearly will affect you. But so you have to put it in context what the sector is and what is things that it's proper to contact or not. I get a lot of queries on this very point from you and others, if not from you personally, but from members of Parliament, and we give them the best advice we can under the circumstances.
And on the same point, like, does this extend to voting on government legislation?
Well, again, it depends. If you're voting on something which directly will affect you, etc., you know, you should not do it, because that clearly represents a conflict of interest. But again, you have to look at the vote, what it entails, and what the consequences of that vote is for your situation before you can make a decision.
And now that you're in this role full time, has your office seen an increase in demand in services? If so, how has this affected your capacity and the need for funding?
No, I don't think there has been any change in the volume of work that's come in since I've been appointed permanently. And whatever backlog there was, we managed to deal with it within the first few months of my interim appointment. So right now we are fully staffed and we're meeting the demands as they come to us.
And Your office is funded very differently than others that are examined in the main estimates. Could you explain how funding is requested and why it's done in that way?
Sandy, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I can answer that question. Yes, so we operate differently. So basically, the commissioner prepares the main estimates of what will be required for the expenses for the office for the next year, and then this is submitted to the speaker for concurrence, and then it's provided to the Treasury Board, to the President of the Treasury Board, and who submits our main estimates as well as the other government departments to the House of Commons.
Okay, so just to build on that, the 2024 main estimates allocated around $6 million for administration and interpretation of the Conflict of Interest Act and Conflict of Interest Code, as well as around $2.5 million for the internal services. What internal services are offered by your office, and how does the increase in operating budgets positively impact the services that you're able to offer within the office? Maybe back to you.
Yes, so in terms of internal services, we're talking about human resources, financial services, information technology, information management, also some parts of communications, and also some parts of legal services offer internal services. We don't have an increase at all in terms of operations budget, but in terms of the salary budget, we have a small increase in that area. So we had to staff an additional person in information technology. But in terms of professional services, I'd say 65% of our operations budget goes to the House of Commons administration because we have a service level agreement in terms of information technology with the House of Commons administration.
That's enough. That's all my questions for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baines. La prochaine intervention est pour Monsieur Villemure.
Next question, Mr. Villemure, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello. Thank you for being with us again. Commissioner, I want the office to work well, and I want to be sure that you have all the resources at your disposal for your mandate. Currently, with your mandate, with your budget, do you have the tools that you need? Yes. We have the resources. We can find a lot of the office's documents online, but we do not have documents on the strategic plan for 2024. We have not yet published the strategic plan because it's a decision that we made with the former commissioner, but the team is currently working on a new strategic plan because we need to support the goals of Mr. von Finkenstein. And so that will be the next project for my team this year. But a strategic plan might require more resources. That's why I'm asking you if you have all the resources that you need. We have new ideas and we want to implement them, and we need resources. Perhaps next year I'll be here asking for a budget increase. Currently, have you decided on any elements for your next strategic plan that you can share with us? As mentioned, we'll have an online program for the House of Commons. Would you be able to explain it, please, Melanie? We have prepared training for all members following an election, and it will be available in the source system with the House of Commons in the coming months. We've also talked about having something similar for legislation, because when we carried out a survey with public office holders, we noticed that online training opportunities is something that they asked for. We also want to improve the training overall. And so we have sessions on a specific topic For example, following a mandate or more specific things that are relevant to members. But my team is always available to offer training and special presentations on demand. For example, with ethics and conflicts of interest, do you believe that online training is enough? Because it can be quite a vast topic. Apologies. With the training, we want to offer a more general idea of the topic and then reinforce that each situation can be different, as Mr. von Finkenstein mentioned. During a debate in the House, for example, everyone has a bit of a different situation. Part of the training always explains that advisors are available at our office to discuss specific situations, but the idea is to give a more general perspective, and people need to then understand what the steps are to be in compliance with either the law or the code. Inaudible. Over the last year, we held about 30 training sessions, and about 500 people took these training sessions in the last year. Mr. Commissioner, you've been seeing things for a long time. And if we look at ethics without complaints here, do you believe that the situation is improving? Because it seems to be that things might not be improving in society, for example. Answer. I have read newspapers like you, and clearly there's a lack of trust in ethics, and so it is essential for us to strengthen the importance of ethics and educate elected officials so that they respect the law and the code. And that will have an impact on public opinion. It doesn't help if there are constantly incidents where people are accused of conflict of interest. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
For 6 minutes, we're going to go to Mr. Green now. Mr. Green, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and welcome back to the committee. The Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics, typically you post your annual reports online, and you certainly, that was the case between 2021 and 2024 for the strategic plan. The 2018 to 2021 strategic plan is currently available online, but your current plan, the 2021-2024, is not published online. Why is that?
Doesn't exist yet. I was only appointed in September on a temporary basis, and just last month on a permanent basis. And obviously, one of the things to do is to have a new strategic plan. But for the time being, we are living with the one that went to 21, and we basically up to what was it? What was it?
2024.
2024, and we basically will in the coming months try to come up with a new strategic plan setting out our goals.
And when do you said in the coming months, when do you think we can expect that specifically?
Melanie, this is in your hands.
We were awaiting the arrival of the commissioner into the position on, or someone into the position on a permanent basis before we moved forward with that planning. Our intention is to have some conversations with the commissioner to help him understand the projects that have been undertaken in the last few years and what will be continuing forward, and make sure that what continue forwards reflects that. I would anticipate.
I do have to intervene for a moment. My apologies to take my time back.
Yep.
He was the interim. He's certainly been around. Your intention is to commence this discussion. Has it begun? Or am I to understand it hasn't begun yet?
The conversations have certainly started with the commissioner, but I would anticipate that my team would be in a position to have that plan done this calendar year.
So, Commissioner, back to you. Assuming that there would have been kind of a process for your permanent appointment to this, in your discussions with government as you were finally appointed to this permanent position, what did you identify during the interview process that would be your main priorities, knowing what you know, be it from an interim basis or from your previous work?
Exactly what I said in my opening statement. I think the office is twofold. It is one, to deal with conflict of interest if there's one, but the other side is also to facilitate the entry of the best talent from the public service to the private service and vice versa. And we really have to concentrate on that, because if you do that well, then you have very few conflicts of interest, etc. And so what we are part of is the education, which Melanie talked about. We have done this online now for MPs. We probably will need one to do for the people who are subject to the Act, especially the people who are nominated, and then also to make sure that people understand that this is not something that you just have to do, it's like checking off, yeah, I signed my statement, that's it. No, it has to be something that's on your mind in your daily activity, and this requires a lot of publication, a lot of speaking publicly, and also using the modern media to get that message out.
That will suffice. Now, into your work, presumably you would have reviewed the previous strategic plans. You would have likely done some financial forecasting to begin to consider a budget. Obviously, we're in budget time. You're here in the main estimates. Did any of the elements of the previous strategic plan require additional financial and human resources?
Yeah, you can answer that best.
Yes. No, so there was no requirement for additional human resources.
So in the time of this term, so we'll call it 2021 till now, how many complaints were filed?
Melanie, do you have the number?
Complaints in what sense? Could you please clarify what you mean?
Complaints to your office, formal written complaints that you would have had to consider whether you pursued or you didn't pursue.
I don't have the number of cases that we looked at specifically in front of me at the moment. They are recorded in our quarterly reports that are posted online, and I'd be happy to compile those and get back to you.
Okay, so if you were to ballpark, what I'm trying to get a sense for is how many active complaints or complaints that you receive versus how many you pursue, to get an understanding of the volume of work and whether or not it's adequate for your office. I hear today that there's only 2. So I would imagine that even within this last year or so, there would likely be more complaints. Could you comment on how many complaints you've had within the last year, fiscal year, so starting in 2023 till now?
Mr. Green, you're using 2 different terms here. One is complaint, one is investigations.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm trying to discern.
So which number do you want? We can give you the number of investigations right now, 2 as you do.
You've already done that, sir. I'm asking you how many complaints, because I want to see how many complaints you receive versus how many you actually pursue. It's a very basic concept.
Okay, we can get you that number. No problem. I have nothing to hide. I just don't have it here.
Fair enough. Thank you. That'll conclude my round.
Merci, Monsieur Green. Cela conclut notre premier tour.
Thank you, Mr. Green. This concludes our first round of questions. We're going to move on to the second round of questions for 5 minutes. Mr. Brock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you and good morning to our witnesses. And may I publicly congratulate you, Commissioner, on your full-time status. I want to follow up a little bit on some of the questions posed by my colleague, Mr. Barrett, with respect to the two ongoing investigations regarding SDTC. And I trust that you're probably not at liberty to tell us at what point you are in the investigation, but obviously it'll be wrapped up soon enough. At this point in time, have you uncovered any element of criminality associated with the complaints?
No.
Okay. And I want to spend a little more time on the issue of criminality because I know you have a mandate to report to the RCMP. And this was kind of fleshed out the last time you appeared with the former Commissioner Dion. You had legal counsel also assisting in the answering of the questions I put to Commissioner Dion, but I don't think it was sufficient time for me to get a fulsome response. So if I understand correctly, where you detect criminality, the threshold from your perspective, is it correct? It is reasonable and probable grounds.
Yeah, reasonable, definitely. Yeah, probably. I mean, this is like all discussions. You can't define them. That's part of the problem. But when we investigate, we come across something that gives reasonable suspicion that there is some criminality. At that point in time, we stop the investigation. We inform the RCMP and say, "Look at this."
I'm really pleased to hear that, Commissioner, because the takeaway from Commissioner Dion and legal counsel surrounding the SNC Lavalin matter is they felt there was no probable grounds to make a referral to the RCMP. Although the RCMP relied upon their report and the evidence contained in that report, I thought that that threshold from a non-law enforcement entity, being your office, was completely inappropriate. What is appropriate, based on your response, is mere suspicion. And I think that's the lowest standard you can have in terms of any criminality. So it's very pleasing to me to hear that during your tenure, that is going to be the legal threshold.
I said reasonable suspicion. I didn't say suspicion. You're a former prosecutor.
I'll use your words, sir.
You know the standard.
Yeah, reasonable suspicion, which is a very, very low standard. So in relation now to SDTC, you said you read the papers, you currently know what's going on in the House. It's been dominating the news for some time. We've got another scandal with this Justin Trudeau government, and that is the Arrive scan. Have you received any complaint from any member with respect to Arrive scan to date?
No.
Okay. You also have the mandate under Section 45 of your Act to initiate your own investigations. Based on what you have learned so far, read, or received information with respect to the Arrive scam, is there any prospect that you may be looking into an investigation as to what has transpired with our broken procurement system?
The Arrive scan is a procurement issue. I don't deal with procurement, as you know. I deal with conflict of interest. The parties involved in it so far, and everybody that's been mentioned, is not subject to either the Act or the Code of Conflict. So therefore, there's no reason for me to look into it, start an investigation or anything.
Okay, very well. Thank you. How many agency-initiated complaints, or sorry, not complaints, but investigations, say in the last 3 years, has your office initiated?
I don't have the number. I can get it to you. I'm sorry. Last 3 years.
So is it fair to say you're largely complaint-driven?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Can you recall the last time that either you were involved or your review of your office's records, whether there was an occasion where your office initiated an investigation on your own?
Well, certainly not during my tenure, but Melanie, I do recall that we've done.
The office the past commissioners have initiated investigations on their own accord without, based upon information that they've come across without it necessarily being a direct request from a member of parliament or a senator, but I would have to get back to you on the exact number of those.
Thank you. That's my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brock. Ms. Khalid, for 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you and congratulations, Mr. von Finkenstein, on your appointment. I want to ask you today about Jenny Byrne and Associates and its implications. Now, I know that Ms. Byrne has claimed that she only lobbies at the provincial level, but their media has reported that just days after Pierre Poilievre's election as leader of the Conservative Party, the lobbying firm run by Pierre Poilievre's top strategist, Jenny Byrne, established a second company, Forecheck Strategies, housed out of the same office for the purposes of lobbying federally. Now, are you aware of this situation?
You know, I'm not responsible for lobbying. Ms. Belanger, you will appear after me. You should ask her these questions.
Now, have you been in touch with any of the Conservative members with respect to this issue at all?
As I say, I mean, I deal with conflict of interest. Neither Ms. Byrne nor is responsible under the Conflict of Interest Act or the Code. So all these activities that she's doing are totally outside my remit.
So can I then ask you, what is the definition of a minister's staff, perhaps as it applies to the code?
The ministerial staff are obviously people that the minister hires to advise him, right? And the ministerial staff is subject to the Conflict of Interest Act, yes, no question about it. But it is the I don't know what further definition to give you. Somebody that the minister hires to advise him in his function of his office.
So when we talk about the benefits that are received or a relationship that may have that conflict of interest in terms of how a political party acts and how their interaction is with lobbying firms, do you not see that as a conflict of interest at all, or that's something that you should be concerned about?
You got to give me a specific fact situation and the details of what you think is there, and that is a concern. If it is in a violation or possible violation of the Act, obviously we will look at it. But I just purely speaking hypothetically and throwing a name at me, I'm sorry, I can't give you a more complete answer.
I mean, you're asking for specific facts. Now, reports have indicated that Ms. Byrne attends regular caucus meetings which are typically reserved for Conservative members of Parliament, senators, and top staff. Reporting also details Ms. Byrne's active participation in morning strategy calls within the opposition leader's office. Now, to me, that seems like there is a specific relationship there, and that should be covered by the Act. Now, would you not agree with that?
Ms. Byrne is a private consultant, is she not?
A private consultant who happens to be the top strategist for a political party with specific interests with her company and her lobbying.
Right. Where is the conflict here?
Well, that's exactly what I'm asking you, sir. You are the expert here. I would like to have a better understanding as to how it is that a private company can sit and have political influence and strategize with a political party, and that you don't question how that occurs, or what implications there are, private or public, what kind of political influence there is happening.
Surely my job is to make sure that a public official does not abuse the information and create a conflict of interest here. How they conduct their own political activity, whom they consult, etc., that's not part of it. I've failed to see from what you just put forward to me that you invite these people to your sessions. Well, If you want that, that's your problem. What has this got to do with your official duties? I don't understand it. I'm so sorry. I don't see how this.
Well, I will definitely clarify now. It is my belief that the role that Ms. Byrne plays within the Conservative Party is similar and, if not the same, as what a minister's staff plays. And to have those conflicts of differing interests here, I think is a flag for conflict of interest. Have you looked into this matter at all? Has anybody brought this up to you?
Very quick response.
No, I have not looked at it, and nobody has raised it before, except you today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Monsieur Villemure pour 2 minutes et demie.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You talked about, Ms. Rushworth, you talked about training on conflict of interest, and we noticed in the report for 2021-2022 that you hadn't, or that the office hadn't spent all the funds allocated. Is there a reason for that? 2021-2022 or 23-24? 2021-2022. In 2021-2022, we had a surplus of $286,000, and that represented 4%. But last year, 23-24, we had a larger surplus because we didn't have a commissioner, and so we had to wait for nominations, and so that's why. Understood. Mr. Commissioner, what are your short-term and long-term challenges? Short-term, I think it would be communicating the strategy that I announced. We want to facilitate the transfer of talent from the public and private sector and avoid conflicts of interest. Up until now, we've focused on the conflict of interest, and we haven't examined secondary tasks. Secondly, we want to create tools that will help elected officials and with the online training, we want to do the same thing for elected officials. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Villemure. Mr. Green?
Let's go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak a little bit to the process of funding. You, before each fiscal year, prepare an estimate for the budgetary requirements. It's considered by the Speaker of the House and then transmitted to the President of the Treasury Board, who lays it before the House with the estimates of the government. How does this differ from processes by which other officers of Parliament receive their funding?
Sandy, go ahead.
Yes. Well, how it differs is we don't have a minister that actually approves the main estimates that we propose. So it comes here for approval, but that's how it differs. We don't have a minister responsible for us. It's the Speaker that acts as the minister for the office, but he or she does not approve. They just consider the estimates, but there's no approval.
And what are the benefits or the drawbacks of that budget process for your office?
Well, for us, it makes it a lot easier because we can manage our project. The commissioner can decide what he wants to push forward. There's no one approving or disapproving the request that we're asking, or whatever the commissioner decides that his priorities are for the next year and how he will manage these resources.
And just for the record, sorry, can you again state your role and how long you've been in it?
My role?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm the Director of Corporate Management. I'm also the Chief Financial Officer for the office, and I've been in this role since June 2016, so almost 8 years now.
Have you had instances where requests for estimates haven't been met or your budgetary requirements haven't been met? Have you ever had that in your recollection?
No, that's never happened before. But we've never asked for, everything that we've asked. Usually it represents a small increase every year in terms of economic increases and salary increments, and it's the same case this year.
And so minus the gapping that you would have had by not having a permanent person in there, would you have found upward pressures given the cost of living, given collective agreements and everything else? Are you able to adequately meet the demands? And forgive me if I came off pretty sharp in the last round, but I was trying to find out how many complaints go in, how many are investigated. Is there a gap there? And if so, why? Is it funding? Could you use more people given the kind of state we're in, the lack of trust, the cynicism that we have in government? Because in my estimation, if an allegation was made against me, I would want it quickly investigated and I would want it turned around. When it's not pursued or perhaps when it's dismissed, then it kind of leaves it hanging out there without that conclusion. So in your opinion, does your full-time complement of staff meet the demand, the growing demand for complaints?
Yes.
Need
So
a
far
very,
it has.
very, very quick response,
Okay.
please.
So far it has. I just have to say that the most of our budget is for advisors, so it doesn't go to investigations and legal services. It's mostly for advisors, as it's about 40% of our complement. So we have not had any issues in terms of budget to be able to answer or to respond to complaints.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green, Madame Tremblay. We are in our last 5-minute rounds. We're going to start with Mr. Kirk, suivi par Madame Lapointe. Go ahead, Mr. Kirk, for 5.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the Commissioner. Congratulations officially and on the record for your permanent appointment. 7 years, I believe, is the term, and certainly that continuity is important. I find it interesting the Liberals' line of questioning. It seems like they're auditioning to be in the official opposition when it's their record that certainly, their Prime Minister, twice convicted of breaching the Conflict of Interest Act, cabinet ministers, members of their party who have broken and found guilty of breaking the act, and Liberals' top pollster, Don Guy, lobbies the government. So we're not talking about somebody who has lobbied the opposition, but their top pollster, the one that's given them the information, lobbies the government for dollars. I tell you, that's certainly concerning to me. And former Liberal cabinet minister Navdeep Bains got he was responsible for regulating telcos and then gets a VP position at one of the national highly regulated telcos in our country. I tell you, it is quite something to hear these Liberals equivocate on such matters. Commissioner, I do want to ask, though, because something we heard pretty specifically from your predecessor, that training was certainly an issue, and you outlined a few of the efforts that you're undertaking to make sure that resources are available to MPs and others that have responsibilities under the Act. So I do want to ask, though, what is the response to those training materials? And then a follow-up question to that is in the context of the availability of you and your team to be able to answer questions, to be able to speak with those who have obligations under the Act, to be able to answer those questions, to make sure that those who have obligations are able to understand exactly what those are. So first, if you want to outline a little bit more about what training opportunities you're providing, because I believe the former commissioner had said that it should be, there should be a mandatory retraining course. So I want to ask you about some of those resources, but then if you could outline what is the response, and do you have, if you could provide maybe information about the number of MPs, others that are subject to the Act, reaching out to your office, so you could explain to both this committee but also Canadians who might be watching about the resources that are available to make sure that those who have obligations have the information required to make sure they don't break the rules.
Okay. Melanie, answer the first question.
Absolutely. So there's a number of different pieces of training that are available from the office. As I explained, we've just recently finished the online training for MPs, and I've requested funding to be able to produce the similar type of product under the Act in the next fiscal year. One of the other things that we've recently completed is a survey of public office holders, similar to the one that we did a couple of years ago with members of Parliament, and asking them about the types of services from the office. From that, we know that they are happy with the training that they are receiving, but they would like to see some more topic-specific training, and we will continue to work on that. Similarly, making sure that we're responsive to the needs of the public. You mentioned people coming to us for information. In the course of a year, my team responds to in excess of 3,000 queries that come in from members of the public or the media, and we respond to all of those to let them understand what our role is and how we can help them.
Could I just, you mentioned some numbers there. Do you have, any information about the number of times that, MPs, and I know all MPs have to do the yearly filings and whatnot, but when it comes to like queries, do you have any numbers about, how often an MP or others that might have obligations under the Act reach out to your office to be able to request information, to ask about obligations, to ask for that information, to again make sure that those who are subject have the information required so that they don't break the rules?
Absolutely. Our yearly average is just in excess of 3,000 requests for advice that come into that team also. Last year, it was about 15% higher than the yearly average. And I can tell you also that their questions mainly pertain to material change, general obligations, as well as post-employment, which applies under the Act but not under the Code. In that, we are able to meet our service standards. Other members of this committee were asking about our ability to meet the demand. We are able to meet our service standards when someone, a member of Parliament or public office holder calls, they are responded to within 3 days.
I appreciate that. So I guess my takeaway from this certainly is that there is no excuse for anybody who has obligations under the code. They can get the information from you to make sure that they don't break the rules. It's just unfortunate sometimes that it seems that we have a government that seems to care less about being willing to follow the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Madame Lapointe, pour 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think it's important for members of the public that may be listening in today to talk about the important role that your office plays. I mean, as the Commissioner, you administer the Conflict of Interest Act as well as the Conflict of Interest Code, and you do that with the aim of ensuring that public office holders and members do not use their positions to further their financial or private interests. I think the other very important thing for viewers to know is that the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics is independent and nonpartisan, and I think that's very important. Can you tell us how can we reassure Canadians that your office is free from political interference?
Well, first of all, the appointment process, right? People have to apply. They have an interview. The interview process involves people from the government and a couple of people from the private sector. In my case, it was a retired judge who sat on the panel, etc. And then whoever the selection is, it's put forward to all the parties in the House, and they have to vote. So this will happen in my case, and it was a unanimous vote. So if effectively nobody saw any problem. Now it's obviously the conduct will tell that if I would be in any way partisan or anybody occupying this position, the whole issue would be lost. I mean, it has the raison d'etre is that we make decisions on the basis of objective fact, not on what of our political leanings are or our philosophical leanings. And, that's the appointment requires that you be a former judge or you have formerly run in an independent organization. I've done both, so hopefully that will give people some assurance that we will act nonpartisan.
Yeah. I was interested in one of the responses that you gave to a question of my colleague, Député Villemur, where you talked about how today there's a lack of confidence today in ethics, and how important it is to reinforce that. Can you tell me how your office does do that in terms of reinforcement?
Well, there's no magic bullet. There's no. It's basically education, using every media possible in order to get the message out, and certainly having investigations and calling it as it is, making sure that where there is a conflict of interest, we highlighted it and we explained why, and hopefully it will serve as a deterrent for others. Melanie is my director of communication, and she spends a lot of time in basically getting the message out. There is a code you have to abide by, etc. So Melanie, why don't you tell you some of the activities you're doing?
So in addition to responding to public queries that come into our inbox or by telephone, we also pay attention to some of the statistics in the office to understand the types of questions that public office holders or members of parliament are asking of us, and try and make sure we think that through when we're also communicating externally, when we're answering media queries, et cetera, to try and weave those topics of interest into our responses in that way. And then, obviously, when we are asked for presentations, we go and deliver those also.
Commissioner, what do you consider to be your greatest challenge facing your office today?
It's a good question. Probably trying to make understanding the digital challenge and understanding what it represents to the whole government, including my office, and how to use it positively. We all see how it's being used quite often negatively, etc. But it can also be a very useful tool. But I don't think we have really mastered it. We're not really, to what extent can we use social media or other to get our message out better, to educate people, and to instill confidence. I think that we are all struggling with it, with digital channel in every sphere of our life, and in mine included.
I think it's important that as members we're accountable, and I would suggest that the same applies to your office. How do you measure your work in terms of not only, I'm not talking only about process outcomes, but more specifically outcome measures to be able to demonstrate the effectiveness of your work for Canadians?
Well, it's rather difficult because what we do is all confidential. I can only give you numbers of the number of people who have consulted us, who have been involved, etc. To the extent that when people get in contact with my office and they ask a question or they want advice on something, we give it. And if they wouldn't follow it, because we say you have to do this and this, otherwise you're compensated, but there would be a breach, and obviously we would start an investigation, etc. There's never anything of that sort. So essentially, to the extent that people consult with us, we give advice and they follow it. That's the best thing is to try to get people to come forward and consult. As Melanie shows you, the numbers go up each year, which is somewhat supportive of the fact that we're actually effective. But given that all we do is, for logical reasons, confidential and cannot share it with you, it's very hard to measure outcome in any other way.
Thank you. Merci, Madame Lapointe. Merci encore.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for your testimony today. Thank you, Ms. Tremblay and Ms. Rushworth as well. We are going to suspend for a few minutes to prepare for the next panel with Ms. Bélanger. On behalf of the committee, thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for being with us today. We are suspended for a few minutes.
afternoon, everyone. We're going to continue with the meeting today. And our second hour, we're very pleased to have Madame Nancy Belanger here from the Commissioner. She's the Commissioner of Lobbying. Ms. Belanger, welcome to committee. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Please start.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président et membres du...
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on the main estimates. I am very pleased to meet a number of you for the first time and to speak to you about the work carried out by my office. The Lobbying Act requires that I maintain the registry of lobbyists, that I expand awareness and understanding of the lobbying regimes through education, and that I conduct compliance work that supports respect of the Act and the Lobbyist Code of Conduct. Let me report on some of the highlights from the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Over 7,000 lobbyists were registered with over 5,700 active registrations at any given time. Monthly reports of oral and arranged communications with designated public office holders attained a record high with over 32,000 communications reported. That's with this morning's statistics. We reached about 4,800 stakeholders through approximately 123 outreach presentations. In carrying out our advisory role, we responded to over 400 requests to ensure compliance with the new Lobbyist Code of Conduct. In addition to 37 compliance files carried out over at the end of the fiscal year 2022-23, we initiated 16 preliminary assessments and determined that no further action was required in 14 cases. I opened 2 investigations, made 2 referrals to the RCMP, and tabled 1 investigation report to Parliament. Priorities for the current fiscal year include the continuous improvement of the Registry of Lobbyists. Recently, we updated the registry so that subject matters and their corresponding details are linked to each other in registrations, thereby improving transparency. This fall, another update will require lobbyists to identify the details associated with the subject matter that was discussed when submitting monthly communication reports. We are continuing to develop ways to expand awareness and understanding of the Lobbying Act and the Lobbyist Code of Conduct. We are updating our interpretation materials with respect to the application and enforcement of the Act, and will issue advisory notes in respect to the Code.
Advancing on 34 ongoing compliance files. The Lobbying Act requires that an investigation be conducted when I have reason to believe that one is necessary to ensure compliance. When I have reasonable grounds to believe an offense under the Act has occurred, I am required to suspend my investigation and refer the matter to the appropriate police authority, in most cases the RCMP. There are currently 4 files suspended and with the RCMP. With respect to investigations conducted under the Code, I am required, once I conclude an investigation, to report to Parliament on my findings. As you are aware, the Act imposes strict confidentiality requirements, and I cannot, therefore, discuss the specifics of any compliance files. The Office delivers on its mandate and fulfills its corporate functions, including by meeting extensive government-wide reporting requirements through the invaluable work of a small number of employees, which now averages 31 staff positions. We are continuing our staffing actions to ensure a full complement of 37 FTEs by the end of the year. The total annual budget for this current fiscal year is approximately $5.9 million. Roughly 4.6 goes to salaries and benefits, leaving an operating budget of 1.3 million. About 700,000 of that operating budget is spent on obtaining services from other government institutions, including services related to HR, finance, procurement, and information technology. Before I conclude, I must reiterate that the Lobbying Act requires this committee to undertake a review of the Act every 5 years. The last review occurred in 2012. 2 opportunities to improve the lobbying regime have been missed in both 2017 and 2022. I will continue to identify and pursue improvements that could enhance the transparency, fairness, clarity, and efficiency of the federal lobbying regime. but most of the regime's identified deficiencies can only be addressed through legislative amendments. I would urge this committee to avoid any further delays, prioritize initiating a review of the Act, and put forward legislative amendments. Of course, I'd like to conclude by thanking each and every employee of the office. They are actively engaged and contribute to an exceptional work environment. I'm extremely grateful for their dedication, professionalism, and excellence in delivering on our mandate. Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Belanger. We are going to start with our first 6-minute round. Mr. Barrett, you have 6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Commissioner, if a company says a significant part of what it does is contacting and communicating with government, should they be registered to lobby?
If they meet the threshold of significant part of duties, absolutely.
Okay, I'll circle back to that. If the contact and communication includes pitching products and services and providing hospitality to government officials, should they be required to lobby, to register to lobby?
Well, procurement is only a requirement if it's a consultant lobbying, not if it's an organization or corporation. So it will depend.
So with respect to the amount of time that is required for, of time lobbying required for, that necessitates the requirement for registration, how many hours a week in contact and communication with government does a company need to undertake to be required to register?
It's approximately 8 hours a week. It's calculated 20% of your time, and we look at it in a month at a time, so about 30 hours a month.
And is that the written, or is that just the standard developed through
the standard that's been developed by the office going back to when the office was first created, practically, because those words are used in the Act.
Okay, so 8 hours a week, 32 hours a month, that's about it?
That's too much lobbying that does not require registration. So another pitch to amend the Lobbying Act. But everybody should know that I am looking at the interpretation bulletin around the word significant part of duties, and I am considering amending that threshold.
I wrote you about a month ago regarding GC Strategies. This is the Liberal government's hand-picked favorite IT firm. They don't do work on the applications, but collect a commission for connecting the government with unknown firms like the giant KPMG with 10,000 employees and 40 corporate offices across Canada. Can you tell us today if you're investigating GC Strategies or its principles for contravening the Lobbying Act?
As I told you in the letter, I'm very much aware of the facts of that case, and I cannot confirm whether I'm investigating. And you know that I do that because I do not want to jeopardize a possible RCMP investigation.
Okay. So this two-man operation has said that they have devoted a significant part of what they do to contact and communication with the government, more than 80 hours per month. Were you aware of that previously, or like Canadians, did you learn that during the testimony of these individuals at committee?
Well, GC Strategies was never registered, so I learned of all the activities like all other Canadians.
So just for clarity, are you able to confirm if Mr. Christian Firth is being investigated by your office?
I cannot confirm that.
Thank you. Christian Firth admitted to meeting a host of government officials outside of offices. Paul Girard, who's the former Chief Information Officer, Dan Gaudreau, a DG at Heritage, Jeff Lemarand, a Program Manager, Philip Johnson, a former CIO, Mark Briard, Cameron McDonald, Antonio Utano, Savak Askabashian, Ross Gordon, Gary Hoban, Chaluka Alaparuma, Gary Davis. Should Christian Firth of GC Strategies be investigated, hearing that big list of names and that the amount of lobbying that he says he's undertaken?
As I've said before, I'm aware of the facts. I know exactly that list you're talking about, but I can't confirm at what stage this file is at.
How many investigations are currently ongoing with your office?
Right now, we have one active investigation.
How many investigations have you paused, having referred them to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police?
Right now, there are 4 suspended. There are actually 6 suspended, but they've just returned 2. So with the RCMP, there are 4 investigations.
And how many have been returned by the RCMP to your office that you referred to them?
Well, if I go back to I've been in office for 6.5 years, and I referred approximately 15.
Okay.
There's been 2 charges. They still have 4. So the math is that they've returned the rest of them.
Right. And just while we're here, I've got less than a minute left. I appreciate your responses. I did just want to mention, of course, that while we're talking about lobbying and in the context of the cost of living crisis that we have, Don Guy, who's a senior Liberal, he collects checks from Loblaws, and last year his firm, GT & Company, met twice with the Prime Minister's Director of Policy, John Broadhead. Wow. Don Guy's daughter used to work in the Prime Minister's office for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Their chief pollster, Dan Arnold, is paid by a Loblaws lobbyist. Taika Bakht is an in-house lobbyist for Loblaws, used to be the PM's regional advisor. Last year, she was able to get a meeting with Mr. Broadhead, her former colleague and the PM's Director of Policy. The PM's new marketing wizard, Max Valaket, did marketing for Loblaws for 4 years. So when we wonder about the cost of living crisis we have and why the Liberals, haven't grabbed that tiger by the tail, we just need to look no further than many of these people like Kevin Bosch or Julie DeWolf. The list goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, Mr. Baines, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for joining us today. The federal lobbying regime sets requirements and standards for the transparent and ethical lobbying of federal officials. Do you believe that these standards are known and respected?
I believe that they're known. I believe when I look at statistics that for the most part that they are being respected, yes.
And I know a colleague from across the way was talking about specifically about GC Strategies, and we know that they've been around Mr. Firth and his partner for over 20 years, working alongside various government officials. And I'm curious about the name changing a name from what they maybe have been operating from before to changing it to something else. Is that a way of circumventing rules in any way, lobbying?
Well, I certainly wouldn't accept that as an excuse for circumventing the rules.
But is that something that should be looked at as a problem? If you're operating for years and all of a sudden, say, a government changes and all of a sudden you change your name, is that something that should be looked at?
Well, I certainly, if I have allegations of an organization or corporation or a firm that has been lobbying while not registered, the change of name doesn't affect the way I will look at the file of whether or not they met the threshold and if they should have been registered.
So what challenges is your office facing when it comes to ensuring that rules outlined in the Act and the Code are not circumvented? What are some other challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge is the significant part of duty threshold. There is a lot of lobbying that is occurring that doesn't require it to be registered. And I receive some allegations. I actually see things in the news and I look into it to see if they meet the threshold, but very often organizations or corporations will stay under the threshold so that they don't need to register, and that needs to be fixed.
So if I was to go further on that, just exactly what you said, you look at news reports, and we've seen media reporting and letters received by your office that you're well aware of the circumstances around Ms. Jenny Byrne, for example, and forecheck strategies. Of particular concern is that staff of Ms. Byrne and associates use the name of forecheck strategies to lobby federally, including to lobby members of the Conservative Party, the leader of the opposition, and some obvious contraventions may be happening there to the 2023 code outlined in the reporting on this issue, specifically section 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. So is there an ongoing investigation into this matter?
I can confirm that I am looking into that matter, as every single thing that you send me, I look into the matter, unless, of course, I've already started it, which often that happens as well.
Okay, and what's the process in your office when you become aware of something like that? What's the process?
So the process is we open a preliminary assessment, and we have a matrix to determine the level. You know, one of my biggest challenge is to stay relevant and make sure that we are quick in our files, that if we need to send something to the RCMP, we do it quickly. If we need to report to Parliament on a code issue, I evaluate the importance or the relevance, the public interest in a file. We open a preliminary assessment and we do our preliminary work. Is there even closely, remotely significant party duty threshold met? We seek a lot of information from public office holders, public servants, which they send us the information. We evaluate, and if I have reason to believe that investigation is necessary to ensure compliance, I open an investigation. And then from there, it's either a report to Parliament if it's a code issue, or I refer to the RCMP if it's an act issue.
So this is ongoing? Have you completed your initial review?
No, it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. And you haven't had to suspend the investigation for any reason? It's continuing right now?
I would not confirm that in any event.
Okay. How much time, sir? I'm going to go into, so just specifically on section 4.1, it states that you should never lobby an individual who may have a sense of obligation due to a close personal relationship. So I know it's sort of, I mentioned somewhat in the previous question, but specifically with Ms. Byrne, there's also been reports that Mr. Polyev and Ms. Byrne share a well-documented, long-standing personal and professional relationship, and recent media coverage has shed light on Ms. Byrne's close ties to the office of the Leader of the Opposition. So based on a review of publicly available information, do you believe that Ms. Byrne and Ms. Polyev share a quote-unquote close personal relationship consistent with 4.1?
Well, you're going to have to let me do my work, because the code only applies to lobbyists that are registered to lobby the federal government. Okay. The code does not apply to someone who's not registered to lobby any one of you. So that's the first step.
Yeah, okay, so if someone's lobbying and they're not registered, then...
Problem, then that's an act issue. So if there's unregistered lobbying happening, it's under the act and it's an offense, and that would have to be referred to the RCMP. If they're registered to lobby and they breach the code of conduct, then I can complete that investigation and report to Parliament.
So I know you said, let me do my job.
So
we'll let you do your job there, but,
yes.
But
Okay,
I'm
we're
looking forward to the
Yes.
outcome of that.
Yes.
Thank you. Monsieur Villemure pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being with us yet again, Ms. Bélanger. You are one of the commissioners that we know will always launch an investigation when necessary, and we appreciate it. I want to know, how is it in lobbying right now? You have a new code. Well, it's very active. Our team is working very hard. All of these stats are increasing, and so lobbying activities are quite high. We've had a lot of requests to interpret the new code, especially for exemptions for gifts and hospitality. So that's kept us quite busy. Things are going well. So the code was well received. Yes, I think so. It's been about a year, or will be in July, and I haven't received any complaints. Perhaps you've heard some complaints, but I haven't received any. No complaints. No. Complaints regarding compliance? Well, yes, I am currently examining some. Inaudible. For the code, I've got perhaps fewer than 5. It's mostly allegations of unregistered lobbying that we receive or that I have to examine. Do you refer many during the year? Last year I referred 2 of them. I've referred 15 cases since I became commissioner, so it depends on the file. I don't make them up, of course, so if the threshold is met, and the threshold is low, if I have reasonable grounds to suspect, then I refer it. That's how many cases per year. We have about 30 files on average ongoing. We're looking at the budget for the office. Do you have sufficient resources to do your work? To my satisfaction, probably not, because I would like to do a lot more, but I only have 30 employees. And I have the funding for 37, so we are trying to recruit, but it's difficult to find people who have the necessary competencies. For the budget, I had asked for a lot more than what I received. For the 2023 budget, I received half, in fact, of what I had asked for. We do a lot with the limited number of employees. I believe that your budget is decided by Parliament and not a recurring budget. It's different from the Ethics Commissioner, for example. Yes, it's decided as for any other department. It has an impact on independence. I don't regulate departments. I work with lobbyists, but for those who have to deal with departments that are being investigated and then they have to make the request for additional funding, there might seem to be a conflict of interest for independence. Perceived conflict, yes. You have fewer resources than you would have wanted. Does that have an impact on the number of investigations? Answer, no. My issue this year is that I have 3 people in the investigations team that have gone on parental leave, so 3 out of 6, and this has had an impact on my compliance numbers. You mentioned earlier that you require a special type of person. Well, it depends on the different field. For investigations, we like to have someone that has experience with investigations, of course, but also for analysis. We need analysis skills. And if we're looking for somebody in communication, we only have 1 person. Well, we want somebody with experience in communication. It really depends on the field. Information management, we're looking for someone in IT. You know, we need somebody who has an expertise in the language that we use, and we require specific experience. When we think about the lobbying commissioner, we think about investigations, but what does the rest of your week look like? As I mentioned, we offered 123 presentations. We are a very small team. We offer a lot of advice. We have a customer service team that works with lobbyists to ensure that they understand legislation. We have over 7,000 lobbyists who are registered. And so we do a lot of awareness raising. I think that that's a big part of my job as well. Do you believe that the lobbying commissioner could have a registry of foreign agents with additional funding, of course? Well, we would need the additional funding, and we would need the expertise as well in national security, which we don't have. Is that something that you could do? I'm a little skeptical. It's something that's been done elsewhere. I personally would not want to have that mandate because the goal is different. Lobbying, according to the registry and the act, is something that needs to be transparent, whereas a foreign registry is different, and I think that the goals would be different. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monsieur Villemur and Ms. Bélanger. We're going to start with 6 minutes for Mr. Green. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bélanger, I'm going to put to you a series of questions in a rather rapid way. I'm going to try to get as most out of this round as I possibly can. So if you could be as succinct as you can, that would be super helpful. And if I intervene, it's not out of disrespect. It's just to get on to the next question. What is the purpose of not allowing registered lobbyists to provide sponsored travel?
to ensure that there is no perception of conflict of interest and a sense of obligation from the public office holder to the lobbyist.
Would it be safe to say that those that offered sponsored travel, paying for trips and paying for lavish accommodations and food and all of these things would have a motive? Would that be safe to say?
Well, I don't know if they have a motive, but certainly if sponsored travel is offered, there's a reason for it. And if they plan on lobbying afterwards, there would be a cooling off period.
And you had mentioned a perception of interest. I think that's important, having the perception of the conflict of interest, because there would be, I think, a rational perception by the public that MPs could be influenced on an issue pertaining to that country or that organization. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And, you know, there's almost a limitless amount that could be spent in this regard. Can members of the public make complaints to your office about suspected breaches of the code?
Absolutely. And I do receive some.
And are they informed of when you are undertaking an investigation?
An investigation, no. They're all informed that I will review the matter, and if it concludes into a report to Parliament, they'll be made aware at that time.
Are you aware of any registered lobbyists who have sponsored MP travel since the new rules came into effect last year?
Yes, and I know what you're referring to, and it's that trip in July of last year. If you want, do I have time to speak to that matter? Would you like me to speak to that matter?
Yes.
Yes. I did, as you all know, the new code came into force on July 1st, and in May, I had received, and I did receive consent from CJA to speak to this issue. They did ask me if I could suspend the application of the code for the month of July in light of the fact that they had 2 trips already organized. And I did not think it was fair to tell them not to pursue that trip since it had been organized for more than 6 months, I think. But I did tell them that if they were going to pursue the trip, there would be a cooling off period with respect to the individuals that they brought on that trip in light of the fact of the amount of those trips.
And what was the amount?
Well, I think they all ranged between. It's in. I don't want to. I think it's in the Commissioner of Ethics report, but I think they were between 15,000 and 20,000 for some of them, if I recall
correctly.
For
the purpose of this committee, I'll go on the record and state that we're talking about Scott Aitchison, Cody Blois, and Valerie Bradford, who took a trip sponsored by CJA after these provisions went into place. And so, you know, this is an exemption. Is that correct? This is an exemption that was granted?
Exactly. It was an exemption just for the month of July in light of the fact that the trip had been organized ahead of.
How long is the cooling off?
So the cooling off period, I told them it would be up to 2 years in light of the amounts. And in fact,
was this in legislation and law, or is this just a policy that you provided in response to this particular case?
So it would be, this is a code of conduct, so it's not law. And I did inform them in writing that there should be a 2-year cooling off period. That cooling off period.
Or must?
Must. That it would be 2 years for the individuals that would have been. You are correct that there was a monthly communication report last February for a meeting that would have occurred in January with one of the members of Parliament that had accepted a trip. CJA advised me in February that they realized that this individual had been invited to a presentation by CJA by mistake. So they were forthright in letting me know that they had made a mistake and that they would not do that again, and it was an oversight that the MP had been invited, and I accepted that explanation.
They made a mistake?
Yes. Well, it was inadvertently that all members of Parliament that had been part of a mission had been invited, and therefore this particular member did come to the meeting, and he should not have been there.
And would the member have been informed of his obligations? We're talking about Scott Aitchison, I presume.
Yes, yes.
Would he not have been informed of his obligations on taking a trip, $10,000 to $15,000, and then being lobbied after by this organization?
Well,
Is he aware?
Well, I don't regulate any one of you, but I did send to all of you a one-pager about the impact of members of sponsored travel on all of you. So I would suspect that he received that information.
Remember,
yes.
To be fair, this is you've created an exemption for CJA. No other organization presumably got this exemption. They got it. They sponsored 3 MPs that we know of that made this trip upwards of $45,000 to $50,000 in kind of gifts in this way. And then there were parameters put on it. So was he in that exemption provided with guidelines on the 2-year cooling off period, or is he in breach of the code?
Mr. Atkinson could not be in breach of my code. The code applies to lobbyists. So
would it not be an ethical breach for him to follow up with lobbyists that he received a trip on?
Well, that you would have to ask Mr. Finkenstein. I don't know.
Okay,
Okay,
Mr. Green, thank you. Thank you. That concludes our first round of questioning, 6 minutes. I do Ms. Belanger, you made reference at the top in your opening statement about reviewing the Act itself, and it hasn't been done since 2012. Just for the benefit of members, there's 2 ways that we can do that, and in 2012 it was an order of reference from the House of Commons for the Act to be looked at. That was the last time it was done, or it can be done through committee, through a motion of committee to study the Act if we wanted to. So that's something to consider perhaps going forward, because in several appearances that Ms. Belanger has had before the committee, she's made reference to the need to look into the Act subsequent to the 2012 review. So, Mr. Barrett, with that, I'm going to go to you for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Commissioner, I want to circle back to some of the names and associations that I listed at the end of my first round. So Brian Topp, who's associated with the NDP, Don Guy, who's a Liberal. These individuals both collect checks from Loblaws. Last year, their firm, GT and Company, met twice with the Prime Minister's Director of Policy, John Broadhead. And I outlined before an additional connection between Mr. Guy and the Prime Minister's office. If I were to send a request for you to review this matter, would you undertake a preliminary review?
Absolutely. I review everything.
Mr. Guratan Singh is the brother of the 4th party in the House of Commons, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, and Mr. Guratan Singh, of course, collects a paycheck as a vice president of Crestview Strategy. He is a lobbyist. They're the lobbyist of record for Metro Incorporated, which is one of the grocery giants. If I were to send you this and request for you to look into it, would you request or would you initiate an inquiry?
Every allegation that I receive, I look at.
Okay, so
yes.
Go ahead.
No, I'm aware of most of the facts that you are referring to today, and I always look at things. I also work with lobbyists to ensure that they understand the code's obligations.
Have you had to proactively communicate with Mr. Topp with his NDP ties, or Mr. Don Guy, or Mr. Guratan Singh?
I won't confirm any of that.
Okay.
Those are conversations that I have with any individuals. If I believe that I need to be proactive in ensuring compliance, I will do that. But very often I open a preliminary assessment and I go from there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, and correspondence to follow. I'm going to turn my time over to Mr. Kirk, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Kirk. You have 250.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to my colleague. Commissioner, thank you again for coming before us, and I would like to, with the changes that were made in the lobbying code of conduct, just curious as to if you can quantify maybe for us, was there significant outreach that was done by members who and I'm not just speaking of MPs, but those who are affected, I guess would be a better way to put it, to ensure that people would be compliant?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, the numbers just skyrocketed as to the number of individuals who communicated with our office to ensure that the code was understood. Incredibly, a lot of calls from members of parliament with respect to sponsored travel, which led me to do that one pager that I sent to everybody to make sure that you all understood where I was coming from in respect to regulating lobbyists. We do a lot of presentations to organization, corporations, firms who want to understand the rules, in particular with respect to hospitality and gifts, which I've really came down on with a number, and therefore people need to want to understand what that really means.
Yeah, so help me understand a little bit about what that communication from your office looks like. So are those emails, or those phone calls, or is that outreach? Is it you being asked to come and give a presentation to a group of people, a lobbying firm? What does that look like?
All of the above. So when someone registered to lobby, we automatically offer an outreach session. So very often they take us up on it, and they'll be one-on-one with our advisors. Then we will send emails to groups, organizations that we are seeing may not be registered, and we say, hey, do you understand the rules, just in case you meet the threshold, for example. I never say no to a presentation. So we've done 123, and think about the number of people we have. So we do a lot of outreach. So it can be upon request. We offer.
I appreciate that. Now one of the it's interesting because of course one of the scandals that has dominated much of the headlines is a company named GC Strategies. Do you find that name misleading in terms of a company that would do contract work with the government being named GC Strategies? I'm just curious if you could just share your thoughts on that.
I never really put much thought to the name of a company. I look at their actions, and then I decide whether or not it fits my
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kirk, Madame Belanger. Mr. Fisher, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Commissioner, for being here. You have such an in-depth knowledge of this that it's really refreshing for us to learn a bit and hopefully take some of this away. My colleague, Mr. Baines, talked about or touched on parts of the, he touched on 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, and I want to touch on 4.2. So it says here, never lobby an official on their associates where the official could reasonably be seen to have a sense of obligation towards you because of political work, paid or unpaid, or you are doing or have done for the benefit of the official unless the cooling off period has expired.
Yes.
So I'm sure you understand that completely, but so if Section 4.2 states that you should never lobby an individual who may have a sense of obligation due to political work, either paid or unpaid, and we've seen in reporting that Ms. Byrne's firm has been lobbying Conservative members of Parliament as well as designated public office holders in the Leader of the Opposition's office. And Ms. Byrne has been reported to be the next National Campaign Director. So asking, do you believe that Ms. Byrne's role as a National Campaign Director could create a sense of this obligation? So, I mean, technically speaking, within the updated Code of Conduct that you published last year, back home in the next election campaign, my sign chair can't lobby me for 1 to 2 years because of that quote-unquote sense of obligation. So tell me what your thoughts are on Ms. Byrne holding that role.
The first thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to comment on Ms. Byrne and her role. She is not at this time registered to lobby the federal government, and therefore I will do my work. But if she is not registered to lobby, she's not subject to this code. So let's put that on the table as a first thing.
So someone that is clearly lobbying but is unregistered should also be a concern, correct?
If someone is lobbying and not registered, then it's an act issue that I would refer to the RCMP.
Thank you. In a CBC article on March 22nd, quote unquote, it said some lobbyists listed as working for ForeCheck Strategies on the federal lobbying database are listed as employees on the website of Jenny Byrne and Associates, but not on the website of ForeCheck Strategies. It seems like some work for Jenny Byrne, but use ForeCheck to maybe book meetings. I'm, again, trying to get clarity. Maybe you can tell me what you think the reality is here as you see it. Does that raise suspicions when people are maybe so ultra fluid in their registrations?
So what the reality is, I don't know because I'm in the process of doing my work. Any company that is registered to lobby at the federal government, so ForCheck is, their lobbyists would be subject to the code of conduct.
Okay.
So there might be some act perspective and there will be possibly code issues, but I need to do the work to determine if there's any breaches of the code.
Are you able to tell us where you are in the process?
The preliminary assessment has been opened.
Okay, so in your experience, which is long, is it common for lobbyists to register with consulting firms where they're not employees?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Is it common for a lobbyist to register with a consulting firm that they are not an employee of? Again, because some members seem to work for Jenny Byrne and Associates, some seem to work for ForCheck. This fluidity of registration.
I don't know what the facts of this particular issue is at this point, but usually a government relations firm will register. What happens with consultants is they have to individually register. It's not the firm that registered. It's each lobbyist has the responsibility to register as the consultant lobbyist, irrespective of which company or firm they're with.
Okay. So if Jenny Byrne is clearly lobbying federally while unregistered, she's inactive as a federal lobbyist, so unregistered. I'm just trying to put all this together, and I know you have probably an understanding that you're not able to share with us today.
Well, I think when people say that there's federal lobbying occurring, we need facts to that effect, and I need to go and determine the facts.
Well, I wish you Godspeed on your investigation, and again, I just want to thank you very much for the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Just switching things up, we're going to go to Mr. Green first, suivi finalement par Monsieur Villemure.
And end with Mr. Villemure. We'll finish a little early because we have committee business to discuss.
Thank you. What would be the penalty for a registered lobbyist who provided sponsored travel to an MP?
It would likely be just simply a breach of the code and a report to Parliament. So it's reputational, really.
So no real teeth, you have no ability as it stands now for any type of, it's a slap on the wrist publicly. You'd mentioned it's a regulation, it's not a law, so there's no criminality involved. Would providing teeth to the legislation, like make it law, make it criminal, would that help you in any way?
Certainly give me teeth, yes. Make it criminal, not necessarily. I think there needs to be a level of discretion. Not even currently, I have to suspend anything I look into that's missing a monthly communication report or one communication that should have been registered that the person is unaware of, and I need to send that to the RCMP. We need a spectrum of sanctions, and that's what I'd like to discuss this with this committee.
I'm in full support, by the way. I'll go on the record now saying, respecting the time, I won't do it right now, but I will be bringing to this committee a motion to have a review as per your request. And you may know that I've put forward a motion from this committee. The committee unanimously adopted this to move the question of sponsored travel to PROC. The idea being that the central budget provide 2 international trips by the government, no external influences at all, at the discretion and full reporting and accountability mechanisms of the House of Commons. Would that help you in streamlining your work so that you don't have to chase kind of all of the paperwork and all the parameters of this, what I would say, I don't want to call performative, but it doesn't have any real teeth at the end of it.
I fully support the motion that was adopted by this committee. In my view, I've been in this world of ethics for over 15 years, and I think it would go a long way to help with the integrity and the faith and the confidence in decision-making when you remove the possibilities of undue influence, really.
That's outstanding. I think that's all I need. I thank you for your time here.
Thank you.
And I thank you for your candor as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green, Madame Bélanger. Monsieur Villemure, pour 2 minutes et demie. Oui, commence.
Mr. Villemure, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to raise a point of order. Yesterday, the committee received a letter from Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada regarding the security review on TikTok. And in that letter, they tell us what the steps were and talked about 200 days delays and doesn't state whether or not we will receive a response in those 200 days. Because we're looking at a TikTok report now, I find that this could be problematic to move forward with publishing a report when we don't in fact know what's in the documents. And the way it's written, we don't even know whether or not we'll know in the end. And so for now, I would like for us to delay the conclusion of the report, because we can't publish a report that is only fluff when there is a security investigation going on. Thank you, Mr. Villemure. Is this a motion that you're tabling, that we will not finish the report on TikTok before receiving the information from ISED, correct? Yes. I propose that we wait and try to put pressure for it to be done more quickly, but that we not conclude our study before having that information on hand. And so, yes, that's an oral notice of motion. Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
A situation that Mr. Villemure is proposing, and the motion is in order. We are scheduled to deal with this report on Thursday. As the committee had indicated, they had asked for us to contact ISED to come up with an understanding of when their national security review that was announced in September would be completed. ISED came back, said it would be roughly about 200 days, but we don't know 200 days from what? From when they announced the study or from the day we received the letter on April 19th. And so I've made it clear in past interventions that I think we should hold off on the study until we see what comes out in that national security review. Mr. Villemure is formally proposing that we do that now through this motion. And I'm going to open up the floor for discussion on this. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please, and then we'll see.
So, Chair, I support the motion, but can we dismiss the commissioner?
Oh, Ms. Bélanger, I'm sorry about that. First of all, I want to thank you for appearing before committee today. And thank you for your continued good work on behalf of Canadians. And we'll see where this leads us in terms of a formal review of the Act, but Mr. Green has already indicated that he's prepared to deal with this, and either through him or through the will of Parliament. So thank you, Ms. Bélanger, for taking your time today.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. So yes. I've got, that was your intervention. I've got Ms. Khalid. Go ahead, Ms. Khalid, on what Mr. Villemure has proposed.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think that this committee appreciates how long it took for us to finally get a report going. We've been doing a lot of work that is very offhand, and it doesn't really lead to many reports. And I was really quite proud of the way that the committee came together to work on this. And while I take Mr. Villemure's points on the need to understand and to take into account the security review, etc., I do want to make sure, and I've said this again and again, to make sure that this report see conclusion, that this report be tabled in the House. And perhaps, Chair, if I may suggest, now I'm sure that the clerk and yourself have done great work to try to get clarity and to try to get this issue resolved. Now, I found that perhaps we could ask a little bit more comprehensive questions to the people that we've been corresponding with, and perhaps we can ask for a follow-up and further explanation or clarification on this. Clearly, we don't know. You yourself indicated, Chair, that you're not 100% sure. I think it would be a mistake for us to table or to shelf this report without having done our homework, without doing the due diligence of finding out where exactly we stand on this. As I've indicated many times before, Chair, I'm quite passionate about this report. The changing nature of artificial intelligence, of social media, of platforms, and its implications on Canadians and privacy concerns, it's going to always be changing. It is going to always be innovating and very, very fast-paced. And I think that if we start shelving reports like this, we're not going to get anywhere because, let's say 200 days from now, I bet you there's going to be different circumstances, and we're going to want to shelve the report again based on new circumstances. I think that this is an ongoing issue that we need to continue to work on. I would propose that we seek clarity on timelines, and I think that we, I make sure that we go forward on this report because it is essential. It is important, and yes, it is interim because I can understand and appreciate that there will be a lot more reports coming on this exact issue, whether it's a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. This is an evolving issue that we need to deal with as a committee, and I strongly encourage you, Chair, to please don't put this aside because we do need to get this report on the record, tabled in the House, and try to work on this issue. And I would perhaps, Chair, as I've said, maybe this motion is a little preemptory. Perhaps we should first be going forward to get clarification instead of just moving to shelve this. So perhaps before we discuss and vote on this motion, that you can seek some clarity and get some answers and some follow-up, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Khalid. Look, I'm not looking to shelve anything. I'm going to do what the will of the committee asks me to do. I do have some concerns, and I think I've stated those concerns in the past, that we're going to be dealing with a series of recommendations that this committee could be putting forward in this report that is completely contrary or contradicts what the National Security Review outlines. So my concern is that I don't want to put anything out there in the public realm and then, have it come back on us after we've adopted the report and then and presented it to Parliament. So that's just my concern on this. I'm indifferent either way on this report. For me, I think it was a good study. I think we had some good witnesses come in. I just don't want to be counter to what ISED is doing and the work that they're doing in any of those recommendations that we made. I will address one thing. The letter that we had asked, if you recall, we came out of the previous 2-week constituency break. We had asked informally, ISED, on the timelines, because that's what the committee had asked me to do. They said that they were not prepared to give me an informal response, but a formal response, which the committee received yesterday. And now, again, in that response, they talked about 200 days. I do agree with you, Ms. Khalid, that there is no clarity in those 200 days. Does it start when the first public reports came out that they were doing a security review in September, or does it start now? I don't know that. So that I certainly agree with you on as far as the timeline and how long it would take. It could be 200 days from tomorrow. I don't know. So I have Mr. Fisher now. Go ahead, and then Mr. Green, I saw your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And you are right. We would be dealing with a series of recommendations. However, that series of recommendations comes from the testimony that the committee heard. I wasn't a member of the committee then. This is my third meeting, and a little bit deja vu because I think that we had this exact conversation when Mr. Villemeux brought it up at my first meeting last week. So I'm very much supportive of my colleague MP Khalid about not shelving this or not, and certainly, Mr. Chair, no one sees you as trying to shelve anything on this. This is an interesting conversation, but I would suggest that we, as a committee, decided just last week that we would program this Thursday as this continuation of this report. I'm 60 pages in. I plan to do my best to get the full 103 pages in, but I would like to see us go forward with what the committee decided just a week ago today. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. What's changed is the formality of the letter that we received from ISED now. So that's what's changed the discussion a little bit.
Yeah.
And this is where.
But it won't change the recommendations or the testimony, right? The testimony that was heard by the committee.
No, that you're correct with. Okay, Mr. Green, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my liberal friends doth protesteth too much. I think that Mr. Vilmuir's motion was a rational motion. I don't see it as being an issue. I think when new information is presented to committees, particularly of this formal nature, it's something we should take into consideration. The report is in our hands ultimately as a committee. We can decide to adopt additional information into our reporting. We can decide to recall witnesses, and we can do all of those things. And I think given the complexity of it, there's a value to addressing and at least acknowledging the work that's being done there. So for that reason, I support it. I don't see any downside at all in at this point, doing the prudent thing and waiting to see what comes out of that. So I'll support Mr. Vilmuir's motion here, and I'm happy to see it go to a vote if there's no consensus.
Okay. So thank you for that, Mr. Green. We do have a motion on the floor from Mr. Vilmuir. I don't see any further discussion. So I'm going to ask if we have consensus on this. Do we have consensus? No. Okay, so we're going to have to go to a vote on this, on the motion. And the motion is to wait until the ISED report comes out, and then the National Security Review, and then continue on with our report at that time, correct? Good. Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Baines.
Against.
Madame Lapointe.
Contre.
Mr. Fisher.
Against.
Mr. Hauswater.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid.
Against.
Mr. Barrett.
Yay.
Mr. Brock.
In favor?
Mr. Couric.
In favor.
Monsieur Villemur.
En faveur.
Mr. Green.
Je vote en faveur aussi.
Yeas 5 and nays 5 pour 5 contre 5.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to vote in favor of that as well.
Yeas 6 and nays 5.
Okay, so the motion presented by Mr. Vilmuir passes. That will change a little bit our scheduling for Thursday. We do have the Information Commissioner? Okay, and the notice will be published soon. Seeing no other business, I am going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you to all who made it happen. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.